You know what they say, if you can't beat them, join them. Kind of like the sun, you can't beat it, we gotta join it. I'm talking lighting. My name is Brady. Welcome back. Here we are in San Diego, talking about lighting for this Crooked Kings video. I can't take it seriously. Woo! In all seriousness, we're talking about the lighting from this Crooked Kings music video that we shot in the past. I'm sure you've seen a few videos on it. I'll put some info down below. But to get you up to speed, we've got this kind of backlit sun interior shot where you've got the sun creeping through these windows, some shadows, and the band performing right here. So it's a really cool setup, a really simple setup. I want to break that down as this video goes on, but I want to backtrack a little to how we got here. Our original plan was to have this kind of backlit peeking through sunset look, but we were going to do that with something like a 1200D, but we know that's not as bright as the sun. Nothing is, for that matter. So fast forward to on the day, I was like, keeping an eye on where the sun was, and I kind of just happened to see where it was, and I was like, wait a second, that could fall into the right place for where we need it if we time everything right. So I want to talk about the timing of the sun and the timing of when we're shooting, and then how we worked with the lighting, etc. So once I got an idea of this sun kind of getting in the right location at the right time, I pulled out my handy dandy Sun Seeker app. This is not an ad, I just use it all the time. And what this is I can just point it up at the sky and see the path of the sun through the camera. So I did that, I took it out, and I was like, okay, where are these windows? Is the sun gonna fall into the right place? And sure enough, it did at around, say, like 7 p.m. or something. So I went over to Nate, I went over to Brian, and I was like, hey guys, the sun's gonna fall where we want it to anyway. So instead of lighting that and spending more time to light it, why don't we just make changes to our schedule and shoot it at the time the sun, like at 6:30 or so. And they're like, okay, we can maybe do that. Let's go scout it out. And I was like, okay, we gotta shoot it like at this hard time if we want to make the sun work. So sure enough, we were like, all right, let's do this. We got to get there. We got to set up for 5:30. We got to have all the time, etc. to set up, light it, and be ready to roll when the sun is in that spot. So to take a step back and take a lesson out of this, the sun is our friend. We got to work with the sun when we can. Obviously, we can't every single time, but in this case, I was like, all right, the sun is going to fall exactly to where we need it to. Let's just schedule the shoot in this time, in this location, and then the sun will help us out. But the sun is not the only light. We weren't shooting entirely natural light, because then they would just be really dark and everything else would be dark, so it just wouldn't have worked. So we're really like working with the sun and augmenting the sun and then adding lights from here. So let's transition into the lighting. We talked about a little bit of the scheduling. I want to talk about how we lit this scene. So we know that we had this sun in play. Let's just call that a practical. That's an in-frame practical. The sun was just kissing through those top windows, and this was doing a lot. This was creating reflections, edge lights, shadows, bouncing light around. It was giving us some ambience, but not all the ambience in the world that we needed. And we wanted to be able to see the band performing. We wanted them to have level and exposure. So I knew that I just wanted to have this very soft ambience. That's the look that we're going for. It's just a very soft daylit ambience, as if the light is coming from somewhere else in the school onto them, or bouncing in throughout the room onto them, and bringing up some levels, some room tone. So what I did is we're going to start with the diffusion, because we really only have one other light. So we took some diffusion, and for this was an 8x8 WAG flag. If you haven't heard of a WAG flag, they're pretty darn cool. I like them. They're just very compact sheets of diffusion. Essentially, it's just an arm that's rolled up with some diffusion on it, and then it just unravels. It's good for tight spaces, good for small areas. So we took an 8x8 WAG flag, and that had on a half grid layer of diffusion on it, just to give a nice soft look. And then we started to build up with our lights behind it. So I started at first with just two 600Cs, aperture 600Cs, because that's what we had on hand, and they're bright and they're great fixtures. And we set those up to a daylight 5600 Kelvin. And I was like, okay, it's probably going to be bright enough. We had them both at 100%, but I very quickly realized how bright the sun is. How bright is the sun, man? Why don't they have a light like that?
The sun's at least 1400.
It wasn't quite the push that we needed, so we needed just a little bit more. So I went out back and I grabbed, the next light is an aperture 1200D, which is probably one of my favorite lights, just because it's versatile and bright. Don't need to get into it. But we took this 1200D, which is also 5600 Kelvin, and we shot that through the diffusion as well. And then we set that to 100% as well, and I was like, okay, it's bright enough. It's there. It's the level we need. So we put all three of these lights through the diffusion at 100% at daylight to act as just this kind of sidey front fill. And it wasn't total frontal. I didn't want like a total wash. We still wanted some side direction, to give a little bit more contrast to their faces. But that's ultimately all that we did for lighting. It was a very simple setup. Yes, we needed a lot of power and a lot of lights. And maybe if I would have done something differently, I would have maybe done just two 1200Ds instead of trying to do the 600Cs. But we were working on a time budget. The sun was going down fast. I was like, let's just leave it how we had it, and that'll be good to go. But it looked really, really nice. It gave us the level that we needed, and it just kind of made me realize how simple things can really be. We worked with the sun. The sun was our friend. If you can't beat it, join it. We sure joined it. And we just added a little bit more light. We augmented that light, just kept this soft, level ambience coming into the room just to bring the band a little bit more exposure up. So it's something to keep in mind when you're on set, when you're scouting and just doing your tech scout as well. Just say, like, where is the sun gonna go? Is the sun gonna come down in the sky and help me out, or is it gonna hurt me? If it's gonna hurt me, am I gonna go somewhere else? We actually moved locations to fit into this sunny spot like an hour before. We were gonna shoot at a different entrance, and then I saw this entrance and I was like, hey, the sun is gonna help us out. What if we moved? And we moved, and it all worked out in our favor. So a very simple lighting setup. All we did was just take the 1200, the two 600s through diffusion and time it up with the sun, and it looked fantastic. And to wrap up with all of us camera people out here, it was on Arri Alexa Mini. We had some Zeiss CP2s maybe? Don't know the glass, so sorry. And we had this just mainly on a rickshaw rig right there with a gimbal hanging off it and a gimbal operator as well to get those smooth pushes in. Pushes. Is that a word? Anywho, that's gonna do it for this video. Hope you guys are doing fantastic. Hope you're enjoying your day. And I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.